This video will show how the political party called People's Voice has been the most vociferous and consistent voice in Singapore since the outset of the pandemic COVID-19. People's Voice is helmed by a man called Tean. He is the party leader. He is well known in Singapore for his speeches and videos, some of which have been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. And yet, Singapore's mainstream media, which is state-owned, will not mention his name. But Tean knew this would be the case from the very outset, and he and his party strategically designed the party's communications so that Tean would be the point of attack, whilst the other members of People's Voice would remain protected and unencumbered whilst carrying out their political work. Tean has a hard-hitting, tell-it-like-it-is style. As a lawyer, he has had years of experience with cross-examination. His bold and clear speech style has enabled the party's message to be carried out consistently further than any other political party in Singapore today. The coronavirus pandemic of 2020 was largely ignored in Parliament for the first few weeks of its arrival, and yet People's Voice, under the leadership of Tean, has spoken out smartly, loudly, and consistently since the very beginning. And whilst Parliament has remained practically empty, devoid of real debate and sparse in COVID-19 discussions earlier on, the Facebook page of Tean, which is the People's Voice main page, has been overflowing with posts, ideas, demands, discussion, messages, and a real home for Singaporeans to express their opinion. Tean's Facebook page puts our Parliament to shame. People's Voice first posted about COVID-19 on January 25th. Between that post and the making of this video in mid-April, People's Voice has posted over 375 times on the subject. There is an opposition party in Parliament, the Workers' Party. A look through their Facebook page and website shows a total of 13 COVID-19 related posts, and only one in the first 5 weeks of the outbreak. This video is not to put down the fine work that the only elected opposition are doing. Rather, it is to show that Parliament has become a neutered and redundant engine, and if Singapore is to prosper and move all its people forward, then it needs an overhaul, and the only person that can do that is you. If just a fraction of the robust discussion and ideas that Tean has generated thousandfold on his Facebook, if that kind of open and free dialogue existed in Parliament, Singapore would once again be a force to be reckoned with. In the last couple of weeks or so, the PAP have U-turned, flip-flopped, and rotated a complete 180 degrees from their position. As of today, Singapore has the most COVID-19 cases in the whole of Southeast Asia, with recorded cases exceeding 9,000. We are now entering the longest lockdown period of any other country in the world. Would we be in such a situation if the tough decisions needed were taken much earlier? Tough decisions and measures that People's Voice has publicly called for since January 25th, over 11 weeks ago, and yet only recently introduced by the PAP. The PAP have been reading Tean's Facebook with minute consistency and scrutiny. He has received 2 POFMAs during this crisis, proof that the PAP have been reading and visiting his page. But instead of considering or adopting the suggestions and demands from not only People's Voice, but from the thousands of Singaporeans' comments on his post, rather, they have chosen to issue POFMA instead.
Went through SARS 17 years ago, so we are much better prepared to deal with the new virus this time.
Are we much better prepared after 17 years? One of the first reactions from PAP was to turf out students and take over their accommodation for quarantine purposes. Really? After 17 years of pandemic preparedness planning, that was the plan?
Encourage those who only have mild symptoms to see their family GP.
If you are ill, visit your GP. Really?
Encourage those who only have mild symptoms to see their family GP.
17 years since SARS, and the PAP hadn't planned for a safe route for potential contagious people to seek medical advice? People's Voice called for a national hotline to be set up immediately and to avoid the dangers of infected people walking into their family GPs and clinics. People's Voice were very vocal at the insanity of the Prime Minister cancelling his own garden party for grassroots.
I have already postponed my Chinese New Year Istana Garden Party for grassroots leaders, which was to be held tomorrow.
And yet allowing the air show to go ahead. Even with DOSCON level at orange, the PAP still proceeded with Merdeka Generation public events. Many concerned members of the public sent in images and videos of such events, gobsmacked that the PAP would allow events aimed at Merdeka Generation citizens who are older and in the at-risk bracket of COVID-19. Netizens demanded, why were these events still going ahead? People's Voice consistently called for the wearing of masks. PAP only made the wearing of masks compulsory more than 8 weeks later. People's Voice demanded that the PAP release the data on the number of people who have been tested for COVID-19. Weeks late, the PAP have finally started doing this. People's Voice called for the closure of schools, and after several COVID-19 infections connected to various schools and preschools, Tean publicly called for the resignation of Ong Ye Kung.
Here, we have an education minister who refused to act in spite of the gathering and overwhelming evidence. And I am asking Mr. Ong Ye Kung to consider his position because he has made a very bad judgment that has put in danger the health and safety of our young.
Weeks later, the PAP closed schools. People's Voice urged for travel bans from South Korea when South Korea had become a hotspot for COVID-19 infection. 10 days later, the PAP did. The Prime Minister gave a second address, during which he announced a lockdown, which they decided to call a circuit breaker. After the Prime Minister's video address, People's Voice publicly challenged the PAP, highlighting why they did not put in measures 1 hour before the video release to prevent the inevitable and subsequent panic buying. People's Voice suggested putting an officer at each supermarket to prevent crowds and hoarding. At the same time, People's Voice appealed to the PAP to address the mental well-being of families and individuals with immediate effect of the lockdown. Why hadn't they made a prior arrangement to organize and mobilize our excellent mental well-being professionals who could be on hand digitally or by telephone to offer immediate support and advice to de-escalate issues as and when they may arise in households experiencing difficulties and tension? 1 week later, the PAP announced a phone line offering support. Today, we have exceeded 9,000 cases. The gold standard that the PAP have been clinging to as a life raft has sunk themselves and the nation to the bottom of a very scary and dangerous river. From Gan Kim Yong's nonsensical suggestion to lower DOSCON if COVID-19 became more widespread, to Ong Ye Kung's failure to close schools, to the horrific failure of Josephine Teo as she failed to think of our foreign workers and how their close-quarter accommodation may put them at risk. People's Voice Facebook page will continue to be the People's Parliament of Singapore, a place for rampant and vibrant discussion. Only with continuous ideating will sound solutions present. Until we have a strong multi-party opposition in Parliament, the solutions for COVID-19 and to all other issues will not be found there.